Then good evening, and welcome to Nerd Rage, episode 184. Last week, of course, we had a special guest on, John Delarose. Now we're back to boring old us. We're boring.
And his crowdfund for his comic book started yesterday for the Flying Sparks comic.
Oh yeah, right. I half remembered that. Every time we do this show lately, I'm tired, so I'm gonna forget lots of things.
I tweeted a link, so
That might have
we
gotten
can find that and share it out later.
because that got buried on my timeline most certainly. I mean, heck, half his stuff gets buried on my timeline because I followed him on Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah. So this week is technically another special episode as opposed to talking about just the topics of the day, and there are tons of topics du jour. I actually did notice. I'm like, oh wow, there's lots of things we could actually discuss here. But I do want to talk about Star Wars. Because,
I wore a special shirt for this, and I don't know if I can.
Oh, yeah, I see that one. Well, I mean, we've seen that one. Me and the audience have seen that one.
I thought it would be especially appropriate for tonight.
I unfortunately don't have much Star Wars paraphernalia out and about right now, and I don't actually own any shirts. I mean, I own shirts, but I have no idea where the hell they are. So I most certainly wouldn't wear anything. I most certainly wouldn't wear shirts that I don't know exist. So, yeah, I wanted to spend an episode talking about Star Wars. One, because Star Wars is near and dear to my heart personally, and two, the fact that the last time we had a show was before the Last Jedi came out, and so there's so much has happened in the world of Star Wars. In that time that, it would be perfect if I was wearing a black cloak right now, given I'm already shadowed. I could be like Darth Sidious. Anyway. But given that so much has happened in the time between the last time we had a show and now, it feels like it'd be somewhat appropriate to at least discuss Star Wars for a while.
Given that you've made several videos of your Star Wars rant, I feel like you could you could talk for a while all by yourself.
But I would rather not do that because there's literally 2 hours worth of YouTube videos doing precisely that.
Yeah.
So 2.5 hours. I don't remember how much they are total.
You never did send me a link to the thing you wanted me to watch last week.
What thing was that? Because if it was the world class bullshitters thing, that I definitely sent to you.
No, you didn't send that.
I did. It's in Facebook Messenger.
Okay. Well, I'm going to Facebook Messenger. And
if it's not there, then that's not my fault because it's definitely there on my end.
oh, did you send that when we were doing the show last week?
I sent it shortly after the show, I believe.
Because that's like back before you sent. No, I sent that Sunday, and then today you sent the Twitter from Daddy Warpig. I thought you were sending it today. I told you to send me anything pertinent today.
Oh no, I sent I sent that message on Friday. Yeah. Yep.
Well, I never did watch it.
That's all right, I guess. Maybe. Anyway, no, it's fine anyway because this is probably going to be less of a less organized discussion than originally intended, just because we're both tired.
Right.
You literally just got off of work, and I have been up for the past 18 hours, I think. 18? Yes, 18. I've been up for 18 hours. More than that, in fact. After getting
No
very
more
little sleep.
screaming and crying in the middle of the night.
No, no, this is just because I have to go to work really early. A shift which I am explicitly not fond of. Um, and
Okay, so I was thinking if we were going to break this down, that we could do characters, pros and cons of characters, and then handle plot separately.
yeah, I think that for the sake of brevity, we'll probably avoid technical discussions for the most part. Um, just because I don't know, I don't really see the purpose in it, and I also spent the entire first video of my series talking about that. But well, not the entire first video, but a good portion of it. But yeah, that sounds good to me. Um, so where to even start? Because you see, this is part of the problem I have with my own rant videos, is that there is so much to talk about that I never really knew where to start, and then
and you ranted forever and ever and ever.
Yes, and it was also very good ranting. Not very good ranting, actually. That's a lie. There are plenty of people. There are plenty of people who did way better than I did. But
Let's start with Ray.
Ray.
Because one thing that bothers me that I hear a lot is that Ray is Mary Jane.
Sue.
And it's sorry.
You know,
I'm tired.
You know, my mother did the exact same thing, except she was actually just completely ignorant.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay. I guess it's too much to hope that you will edit that out.
I don't. No.
So, okay, it bothers me to hear that Ray is to marry Sue. And I did actually watch 3 of your videos. I couldn't find the first one.
Really?
The rest of it kept me very busy. You had a lot to say. But yeah, there's this idea that, she's too competent or whatever. And I think it's silly to, sort of brush the character off in that way, primarily because Rey had a very different life from Luke and even from Anakin. So she was already a really good fighter, and she used a bow staff, which, I mean, in terms of technical, proficiency, she would be able to transition to a lightsaber reasonably well. I would think with just, some of the moves that she would be able to make with that. So, okay, as a fighter, Rey had a lot of experience already. Technically, she had a lot of experience. She scavenged all of these Imperial ships and made things, and this was how she survived. So, this is ingrained knowledge and behavior, because her survival did depend on what she could find, what she could make work, whether or not she could defend herself and stand up for herself and all of that. So you take Luke, who, okay, he's a moisture farmer. He farmed water, okay? And he had an aunt and uncle that, almost babied him in a way. They didn't want him to go out and, get involved with this big galactic conflict, for one thing. They didn't want to expose him to his father, for another. But, the result was that Luke was kind of whiny. Even as a young man, he was kind of a whiner. He didn't know a lot. And yet somehow after like a few days with Obi-Wan, he was able to go and face Vader. So, I mean, to call Rey a Mary Sue, I think, is just to sort of excuse a lot in both the originals and the prequels, because Anakin was just, I mean, it was just sort of explained away as he was just good at everything. Like, he could touch anything and he was good at it. And that was, from his infancy. So, why wouldn't Rey be good at flying or fighting? It seems that the case has already been made that, the Force sensitivity would give her an advantage in those areas. Plus, just her life on that planet gave her an advantage. So that is, my first sort of, and I think that you had a point. You were talking about how she didn't really develop as a character. She was good. Like, she was, her nature, her character was good. And that's, it's different from being, having a sort of aptitude for different things. But I do think that they could have, given her a bit more of, a struggle there with, questioning her choices. And I got excited at first in those conversations that she was having with Kylo, because I felt like he was probably the only person capable of making her question herself. And I thought that their conversations were really powerful because they influenced each other. She was trying to influence him, to good, and he was trying to influence her, to darkness. So that it would have been interesting to see some more development with those different little conversations. And frankly, I never gave it one thought about, the whole shirtless thing. I was just like, he's doing what he's doing, and then they have this moment, and
yeah, the big problem with that, though, is that for a lot of people, it's just a dumb comedy moment rather than anything else.
I mean, yeah, until they started making memes out of that, it just didn't even affect me at all. Like, I didn't care that Kylo didn't have a shirt on. Why would anyone always have, like, full outfit? That didn't make any sense. I am curious. You kept saying that there were like 2 or 3 days between 7 and 8. Where does that number come from?
It's mostly just an educated guess, because the First Order already knows where the original Resistance base is. That's, they're planning on destroying it with Starkiller Base at the end of The Force Awakens, but they haven't evacuated yet. And in fact, giving it like a 48 to 72 hour period is kind of generous, because you think they'd be evacuating immediately if they're right in the midst of the evacuation. Their time, like the timetable has to be really short. There's no way it could be long. There's no realistic way it could be longer, because the events are so immediate. This is
where I part ways with you, because I was under the impression that more time had passed. And so a lot of your criticisms of what happened as far as characters and plot, it kind of becomes moot if more time has passed.
But I don't see there being any potential for that. If
more
time had passed, that's just it. If more time had passed, I think more would have changed in the movie.
You talked about the Resistance being called the Resistance, and how you didn't like that it was called the Resistance. When Rose showed the symbol to the little slave child. Anyhow, so if more time had passed, you're not really dealing with an established government. You're dealing with a government that has been deposed by coup. you're also dealing with, the First Order having cut off supply lines, including fuel. So that explains the chase. They have run out of gas because there was no way for them to refuel in this time. And I mean, quite frankly, if you were going to stage a coup, wouldn't you do that? I mean, you have to cut them off from getting any sort of supplies that would keep them fighting you, and fuel would be one of the first ones. That it would also explain why Finn can get up and then go on this, side quest or whatever, because he's actually had more time to recuperate.
And I would say that's still all incorrect. As far as Rose is concerned, it's already established. It's already established in the Force Awakens that the Resistance has existed for several years, I believe. I don't think it's ever established in the movie itself, but I think in outside books and so forth, it talks about that sort of thing. But even leaving that to one side, the thing is, I still don't think you can actually get around. I don't think you can get around the time, like the whole time frame issue here. Like, if it had been if there had already been several weeks, several months passed, then that Resistance base should have been completely evacuated months before. I can't remember what planet it's on even, because that's the exact same Resistance base from The Force Awakens. There's no chance in hell they wouldn't have evacuated by that point. It can't be a significantly long period of. It can't be a more significantly long period of time than a week between the end of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And again, I reiterate, I think it's almost impossible for it to be longer than 3 days. But no, I'm not making the assertion as an ass pull or anything. I'm actually saying that the only way, like how this works makes sense. The only way that that initial opening scenario works is if only a couple of days have passed. And if anything, I would chalk this up really to kind of sloppy and lazy writing, because it feels like they wanted to create this situation. It feels like they wanted to create a situation where there's this urgency in the movie, but didn't really think through like all the implications of what they were doing. Because I understand what you're saying here about, like a longer period of time being passed, and maybe even that's what some of the writing team was even thinking, in terms of like supplies being limited and,
I honestly think it's more like a week or two, and the fact that the base wasn't evacuated, that was where the writers messed up.
I mean, it could be that. But I'm going based entirely
rather than everything else being wrong, I think that point was wrong, and everything else makes more sense.
But I'm basing it entirely off. I am basing it entirely off of my assertion, because that's what we're presented with. We're presented with this base not being evacuated yet. So, based on that alone, that's the time frame I have to go with. Otherwise, I'm making too many assumptions.
Well, consider this. They haven't evacuated that base, but if they're cut off from all their other supplies and there's no way for them to refuel, because how are they supposed to know that suddenly, all these members of government and the establishment and whatever and all of these different planets would just be completely blown up? They had no way to prepare for that. So now they're left with trying to find not only another base for all these people and all of this equipment, but the means to get there.
Well, this also gets into the weeds about whether or not fuel should have been limited in the first place, or if that was just a very arbitrary plot device to create this whole chase sequence.
Well, like I said, it makes more sense if more time has passed, and if because this is essentially a coup, they were cut off, which is how I understood it and how I read it.
But I think that, in my honest opinion, I think that's stretching credulity too much.
I don't think so. That's your opinion, but Of the
Yeah,
two of us, only one of us went in without preconceived ideas.
except I would have made this assumption anyway. Doesn't matter.
Except
I
that we
would
don't
have
know
believed
that
this anyway.
because you were already dead set against this movie because you had been like elbow deep in all these various
And I also
critiques.
wasn't dead set against the movie. I gave it a chance. I watched it, and I wanted to
You were
like it.
already upset about it before you ever went in to watch it.
That's not the point. I watched it
Because we
because I
argued
wanted to.
about that, and I told you you need to go see it for yourself and stop letting other people make your opinions for you
And I
or
thought
shape your.
that was entirely unfair. Entirely
So
unfair. Other people don't shape my
I
opinions.
did go in
I
and see
shape
it
my own
without
opinions.
preconceived ideas, without all of these notions that it's gonna suck and there's these giant plot
Are
holes.
you even listening to what I'm saying here? Because I don't think you
When
are.
I
And I'm not
saw it,
appreciating it.
I saw it as being further in the future than what you're talking about.
And I think that's incorrect. Again, we
You're
can't.
entitled
We're
to
at it.
your
We're at
own.
it. Yeah, and you're entitled to yours. And that's what you don't seem to be getting. Like, your opinion is also an opinion. Like, you're also dealing with an opinion here, and I don't think you've made a sufficiently convincing argument in the opposite direction.
I have though. I mean, you tell me if you were going to destroy an established government and set up your little, whatever, military coup. First, you would do exactly what happened in episode 7, which is, this massive strike right at the get-go takes out a lot of, your sort of government, your leadership. It completely, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, you've sort of destroyed the financial support for this group, and then you begin cutting them off from supplies, including fuel. So then, what is the resistance to do in that case? They have to find somewhere to move, and they have to figure out how to get there, and they can't do it just like that because they no longer have the infrastructure to do that. Are you Googling the time frame?
I actually am. I'm actually legitimately curious now because I'm thinking about this. Like, actually, I'm actually legitimately curious to know which of us is possibly right. Because it's not like your argument. I mean, like I said before, it's not like your argument isn't without merit. It's just I don't. It's just that based on what I saw in the movie, I just don't see it as working here. But
okay, so while you're looking into that, Leia.
Yes.
So we can talk about the character of Leia. All right, so she's kind of, I don't know, she's like in the beginning of the movie and she's sort of at the end of the movie. And then that period in between, she's unresponsive, I guess is the word for it. So my reaction when, they bomb the bridge or whatever and she's floating in space.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, that can't be right. They can't just kill Leia off right in the beginning of the movie. Second of all, I wondered at first if Kylo was responsible for her sort of being preserved because he didn't decide to go ahead and kill her. Like, he had that moment. And then someone brought up a good point that I hadn't considered, and it was simply instinct, the instinct of self-preservation. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about, well, it's never been shown that Leia had any sort of, force training or whatever. We know she's force sensitive because of the originals. because she could feel things. Um, and I don't see why it would be, 40 years later and she wouldn't have ever done anything with force sensitivity. I'm sure that there had to have been some sort of dabbling going on there.
Well, I mean, that's the underlying problem with a lot of the aspects of The Last Jedi, is that a lot of these elements simply aren't established. And that's what messes up so much of the movie, as I say, I don't know, in part 2 or 3.
Right.
I think it's 2. That's what messes up a lot of the movie, is the fact that this stuff isn't established. It's not that Leia couldn't necessarily do this, it's that it's never established that she has the know-how or anything to, do it. And that's
Right.
and that's what throws off so many people.
I mean, okay, just playing devil's advocate, because I do think that there should have been some kind of explanation for that.
Also, the reason only results in a 36-hour coma as opposed to something longer or something. But anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
But you could play out devil's advocate and say not every aspect of a movie should have to be explained to the audience. I mean, you kind of have to fill in some blanks in anything that you watch.
But enough.
It would become very tedious if you tried to explain everything.
But
I
enough
do think
has to be
something as
explained.
big as floating in space and then pulling yourself back to the ship should have some kind of explanation.
Also,
that seems like a big thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. The thing is that enough has to be explained. And often when it comes to good writing, it's not even a matter of necessarily intentionally explaining it. If you ever paid attention to like really good works of art, good writing, good books, good movies, and so forth, they kind of almost in a way kind of accidentally end up explaining themselves in no small part because I guess maybe like the author kind of thought of it in advance and there's like little hints and so forth that kind of point to various interlocking ideas that if you kind of unpack it, you're like, oh, wait, this actually does fit together. And of course, I'm too tired to think of anything right now, but anything specifically right now. But that does tend to happen. And that most certainly didn't happen here. And I think that's just the biggest problem. Because all you need is like a throwaway. Because all you would need really is a throwaway line about maybe about Leia doing it, or showing Leia using the Force, in a more meaningful way than just just a vague Force sensitivity, being able to sense people reaching out to her and so forth. Do something to establish that she's just done a little more. Nothing. It doesn't have to be anything big. Maybe she just uses some sort of Force telekinesis or something. But something to show that she hasn't just been the same person for 30 years. Because without showing that, that's why without showing that, it just falls flat entirely. Because
right.
I think that
I even watched after that scene to see if there was like, how did she survive that, and Kylo kind of cutting his eyes away or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still sort of expected that he might have had a hand in that, somehow. Like he reached out with the Force just to protect his mom.
It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's another problem I think that a lot of Last Jedi defenders kind of suffer from. Is just and I'm not trying to bash you or anything, but it's the sheer number of extrapolations that have to be made to justify some things that happen in this movie. Because
I told you last week that was a scene that really pulled me out of the movie for a moment. And I was just giving you my initial impression was, they can't kill her right here at the beginning of the movie. That would be awful. And this, just to have it blown up like that. I think,
that's how they killed Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, but he's not important like Leia is.
Yeah, I know.
He's only known because he's a meme.
I know.
But I mean,
I did readily admit to that.
You would expect, especially with all, like the sentiment around Carrie Fisher's death, that they would treat it, as something a lot more profound than just, these starfighters blew up
Well,
the bridge
based
or
on how
whatever.
Ryan Johnson handled the entire movie, I doubt that. I actually sincerely doubt that. So,
I did not expect for her to survive the movie, but I really didn't expect for that to happen at the beginning.
yeah.
And so at first I was like just shocked and kind of pissed, honestly. And then after that happened, it was like this moment of, oh, and followed immediately, but how?
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's why I watched so carefully after that to see if Kylo had a hand in it, because he hesitated, and I thought maybe it was him.
I don't know.
And it didn't even occur to me to think that it could have been like, because that was someone else's initial impression, was that it was just self-preservation and instinct kicked in and whatever, but and then she gets back to the ship and collapses, and then we don't know.
Mm-hmm. It's totally forgotten for the rest of the movie, except for when she wakes up. So,
Right. And then like storms in and blasts Poe, and it's like, what?
and then even then, it's like, looks like you just literally just woke up, and you're just okay. You don't even know what's going on,
Right.
and you're just like
Woke
you're just
up,
taking
walked around the
sides.
house,
Okay,
and
that's cool. That's what a real leader does. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just, that still confuses me. I don't know how it happened. I can have theories about how it happened,
Right.
but that's all I have.
Yep.
And I feel like my Leia theories are thinner than my, fuel shortage theories.
Yeah, and at least again, I readily admit that theory's okay if you're right. Again, and I did look at Wikipedia. I see no indications the actual timetable, just says the days after. And even then, it says, I guess it was in a novelization that Leia held a funeral for Han at the early hours of the evacuation. And it doesn't seem unreasonable to think that the evacuation at least happened immediately. It's like started immediately after the successful assault on Starkiller Base. Now, who knows how long the evacuation took? I mean, if we used like the evacuation of Hoth as a timetable there, that would just be a matter of hours. So Dakar's, and the base is on Dakar, by the way. That's the name of the planet. The base on Dakar seems to be smaller than Echo Base on Hoth. So I'm just gonna say we're probably just going to agree to disagree on this.
I don't. I don't see it as 2 or 3 days. I see it as at least a week.
And even then, I think a week. I think even then, I think a week may be too long. I don't know.
But I was thinking, between a week or two.
Because I
And
don't know.
time-
Doesn't that just I don't know. I guess it doesn't subtly suggest that they've just been sitting on their laurels for a week and now suddenly they're urgently evacuating everything.
I would also have to watch it again, because I thought that like they had been evacuating, but it was an ongoing process.
Well, I'm just basing it on the apparent size of the base from episode 7, I guess. Like, it can't take that long to evacuate a base that's small. It's not as big as Yavin or anything.
Another character. And you want to talk about another character?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Should we go Finn, Poe, or Luke?
Well, let's try to wind down a little bit. Let's talk about Finn for a bit. Oh no, we're just gonna wind up because we're gonna talk about Rose. Shit. Actually, there's no avoiding this particular minefield, because if we talk about Finn, we're invariably gonna have to talk about Rose. If we talk about Poe, we're invariably gonna have to talk about Holdo, and if we talk about Luke, well, it's just gonna come back around to Rey again. So.
Okay, well, Finn, like I said, I felt like he had more time to recuperate, and the sort of camaraderie between him and Poe, I still felt like it was there, and I only wish that I had seen more of it, and that they weren't separated.
That's my opinion. That's definitely my opinion. I want to see more of these two, because they mesh so well in The Force Awakens, but...
they were like bromates, and it was awesome.
Yeah, and all the all the LGBT folks were like, we want it to be our gay romance, but you know,
But I don't know. I felt like it was, it was a welcome sort of humorous relationship between those two.
yeah, because it felt so organic and natural. Because it did feel organic and natural. As
Yeah,
literal as they interacted overall in The Force Awakens, there was there was an organic, natural chemistry to the way they interacted, and the humor
right.
in it also worked out very well. Because I mean, I talk a lot also about the humor. I think I was in the first video. I guess because you said you missed
I
somehow.
didn't see that.
But I did talk about the humor and how I think it's jarring and out of place for the most part in The Last Jedi. Um, like there are funny moments, but even then, I don't know. I felt like the movie should have been more tonally serious on the whole. Different story.
I don't know. I kind of feel like that it should have had more humor, but it needed like that natural, organic sort of humor.
It needed more organic yeah, it needed that's my opinion. It needed more organic humor rather than some of the really forced jokes that movie forced in there. It's just like
But like Poe's expression when he sees Finn just wandering with his stuff spewing out of, his whatever sort of spacesuit that he was in.
that I don't know. That joke fell
that,
flat
you
for
know,
me. Like it's like taken on its own, I think it's funny. Taken in the context of the rest of this movie, I don't. And that's
but
kind of
those two are good together.
yeah.
Um,
But
that's a good on-screen duo. Whereas in most of the movie, Finn is out with Rose, and that was a horrible on-screen duo. There was like no chemistry there. It didn't make any sense. She's just some random person that he ran into on his way off the ship, and for whatever reason that's only hers,
they just
she went with him.
yep.
You
They just
know,
end up attached to the hip for no readily apparent reason.
um, and then you have this whole side quest where, okay,
Oof,
I
the
can
side
buy that they need to go find this code breaker, and I can find that I can buy that they need to find him at this place
I'm
that's
willing to
like,
accept those premises too.
right, well, that's, it seems like the sort of place that a shady person would go to find work.
Especially when he's rich.
I can buy all of that. And I thought, it would, I thought if that was all it was, it would have been an okay part of the movie. But it became like this huge part of the movie. So that you're like, slow chase, and then you're over here with, like the poor abused children and animals. Slow chase, abused children and animals. And it's just like, why is this taking so long?
Awful slapstick comedy. Don't forget the awful slapstick comedy. I mean, I'm still like, how the hell was BB-8 shooting those tokens out of him? What mechanism is inside that ball that allows him to shoot casino tokens at things?
Don't question the droids. BB-8 was the best thing about that side quest.
Well, yeah, but even then, it's just like, but a shiny gold nugget in the middle of a turd is still covered in turd.
I mean, if what goes in must come out. BB just put some force on.
How?
He's a droid. Don't just let it go.
But R2-D2 couldn't just do absolutely everything. I mean, even lots of people questioned the fact that he had rocket boosters in the prequels. Let's be honest. The whole rocket boosters things was definitely George Lucas like, look what I could do with CGI. So.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's almost totally what it is. I mean, not that I hate the rocket boosters per se, but it's just like, why doesn't he have these in the original trilogy?
So
big old
BB-8
retcon.
was the best thing about that.
Anyway, sorry, back to Finn and Rose, though.
The Finn-Rose relationship was just weird from the get-go, and it didn't get any better. I mean, even this whole quest that they did together, I never felt that they actually bonded.
Nope.
It was supposed to be like, she reveals that, like she understands these kids. She has a past where she knows what it's like to be, used in this way or whatever. And
bear in mind that in and of itself is really a ham-fisted anti-capitalist message there, you know?
It is, but politics aside, it, the whole thing where they free all the animals and then the animals just, I know a lot of people loved it because it was like the animals had their own revenge on these evil people, evil rich people or whatever.
Except the animals are just going to get recaptured and the slaves are going to get whipped to repair while repairing everything.
But what really bugged me during that whole sequence, what bugged me more than anything, beyond any kind of political messaging or bad chemistry, was the fact that they went there with like this sense of urgency. They had to find this code breaker because there was only so much fuel left and so much time left. And then they get there and it's like the urgency evaporates.
Yep.
Suddenly they have this other higher calling.
Yep, they get ultra distracted.
You just wonder, like, okay, so you're fine with everybody on that ship dying?
Like, you remember
what happened to the urgency?
You remember back in episode 1 when Qui-Gon Jinn is revealed to be a Jedi, and Anakin's like, "Are you gonna free all the Jedi?" And it's like, "No, that's not my mission. That sounds like a terrible idea." Even Qui-Gon Jinn, the maverick that he isn't going around freeing all the slaves because he knows that's ludicrously impractical given the scenario they're in. But as far as Finn and Rose are concerned, there's another big problem with their whole thing. And that is, Finn is the primary character here, but almost all the major decisions made in their little mini arc is done by Rose. Rose completely overshadows Finn's presence in the movie. And of course,
it almost feels like, they take him on a journey of learning where, he becomes more, I don't know, empathetic to the people that are being held down by the First Order or whatever, like suddenly he can see and put a human face to who is under the boot of the First Order that he used to work for. I mean, that seems like what they're going for.
Admittedly, there's no indication that Canto Bight's allied with the First Order. It's just there. And it's like, it actually would have been cooler if it was allied with the First Order, because then that gives you more emotional impetus. But no, it's not what happens at all. It's just Casino Planet.
I feel like Finn learned all that he needed to learn about being under the boot of the First Order when he was ordered to kill a bunch of innocent people and refused.
When he was actually part of the First Order. I mean,
I don't think we needed that side quest for Finn's character development.
I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, I think that's a huge problem with the movie as well, is the fact that Finn doesn't seem to experience any real character development between 7 and 8. In 7, he has this huge character arc, and then suddenly kind of just reverts, not entirely, but he reverts very heavily just to create a new character arc where he kind of ends up back in the exact same place he was at the end of 7. Where he's because think about it this way.
It's ridiculous that he suddenly forgot about the urgency of this mission and their whole purpose there.
Well, I would think,
and then and then the mission is just a complete bust. Mm-hmm. Like the whole thing is absolute nutter crap. It doesn't work.
Just wait until we start talking about the plot. Oh my God, that's gonna be an adventure. Oh, that's gonna be an adventure.
And then I felt like, at the end of the movie, when Finn made that decision that he was going to sacrifice himself, I actually felt good about that, because it was like he finally came into his character.
Guess what?
He finally had that defining moment where all of his decisions led to this point.
Yep.
And then Rose knocks him out of the sky and kisses him for no good reason, and then passes out like some sort of dramatic, Victorian lady.
I mean that's the thing too. It's like the movie takes this whole idea of noble sacrifice and plays it with Rose's sister, plays it with Admiral Holdo. Whether or not that's deserved, that's a matter for debate. But at the end of the day, that's still there. And then here comes Finn, here comes Finn. It's like, Finn's going to make that ultimate sacrifice. He's a major character. This would really shake things up, And I think I described her as a fucking retard in the video. Just comes in out of nowhere and ruins everything. And I will flat out say that is absolutely the worst scene in Star Wars. All of Star Wars. There is no scene that compares to how awful that scene is. Because it's on every single level that scene is wrong. Because if you think about it also, the way the scene is built up, it is built up straight. It's built up seriously. The music gets quiet. It's dramatic. You know, all the sound goes away. It's like the scene primes you for this huge, impactful moment, and you get this impact, all right, where you want to punch Ryan Johnson in the face so hard that Kathleen Kennedy feels it.
Yep. Oh gosh, that was awful. Because like I said, it just, it built it up, and you finally feel like, what started with Finn disobeying orders has culminated. Like we have come into the fullness of his character, and the potential of his character with like this awesome self-sacrifice where for the good of the group. Yep. It's gonna be a serious blow to the First Order, and then nothing.
Yep.
Nothing.
That scene makes me angry.
And not only that, not only do you get the big fat nothing, but then they try to force some kind of romance? Is it even a romance? I don't know what it is.
Because Finn doesn't know what it is. If you look at that scene,
so
she
weird.
kisses him, and he just stares at her like she's retarded. He's like...
Even taking into account all scenes with Jar Jar, that one was the most awkward.
Yeah, and even then, it's like Jar Jar's like, it's like really straightforward what Jar Jar is. Dumb humor. Dumb kiddie humor. I don't know what that scene's supposed to be. But it's neither emotional or romantic.
No, it's not. And the thing is, you kind of know that Finn, I think, likes Rey more in that way. And
even then, I don't think that's quite there for them.
But as far as anything developing, you could see Finn developing feelings.
You can see that potential there.
At no point do you see him develop anything for Rose.
Heck, you barely see Rose develop anything for him. The closest thing she has to him is like
this... At no point do you see her develop anything for him until she knocks herself silly, kisses him.
She almost kills them both. That's the even dumber part. She almost killed both of them.
And she almost killed both of them when only one of them had to die, and it was so dumb.
Oh my god. I hate that scene.
Oh my god.
And I wish there wasn't a scene I could hate that much, because it just doesn't need to be there. I don't know. I'm assuming though, if you watched three of my videos though, then you watched my fourth video where I like rehashed the whole battle crate.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah. You don't worry about that. I'm just
retell it in your sort of how you would like to have seen it done.
Not even how I would like to see it done. I just want to throw an idea out there. I'm sure there's thousands of ideas, but
I mean, they could have played it exactly the same and just not had Rose knock Finn out of the way.
That certainly would have helped. That certainly would have gone a long way to helping.
Let everyone else be sort of, have that feeling of they're gonna survive and they're gonna hit them back, and it's gonna be for Finn. Give them that. Let that bolster them.
I think I said it last week. It's like, or 2 weeks ago. I can't remember which episode it was. But the huge thing is that it's like the movie could have done like 3, 4, even like I'd say half a dozen of the things that people criticize in it, and it would have been perfectly fine. Having everything at once is really what screwed the movie up. And then it's these really big, and then there's these really big things like Rose and Finn that like exacerbate the problem.
Oh, it's so bad. So bad.
Okay, so let's move on to Poe Dameron.
Okay.
I want to hear
Um,
your take on him before I go on. Because I have some thoughts that I don't think I actually articulated correctly. Or not even correctly. I don't think I articulated them at all because I didn't think of them until after I made the video. So I
okay,
want to hear
so
what you say.
Poe, he almost felt like a different character than in 7.
Yes.
I loved episode 7 Poe. Episode 8 Poe, it felt like they were trying hard to
Too
make him the
hot.
hot-headed. They were trying too hard to make him the hot-headed, hot shot pilot.
Mm-hmm. They,
Where he's gonna do what he wants to do and dang the consequences, and he only answers to himself, and blah blah blah.
it feels like they turn him into a douchebag for no good reason.
Not really a douchebag, but just almost like a caricature
A caricature of a douchebag.
of who he was or who he was supposed to be, or like we get that he's kind of a hot shot, and he's not above showing off,
And
and
I
all
can
this
believe,
kind
yeah, I can believe conceivably that he could be a little cocky at times because he still seems to be young. He doesn't have a lot of, he doesn't seem to have a lot of experience under his belt.
he brings the swagger that Harrison Ford brought in the originals. So you kind of know that they're going there with that character.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's going to be the rogue. He's going to be the scruffy looking nerf herder and whatever. That
But different.
isn't always just right in line with authority, and that's fine.
So
That
even
would
though
be
it seemed like
fine.
he still seemed more disciplined than what he was written to be in this movie.
He seemed more disciplined in episode 7, definitely. And it would have made sense if his rebellion had not occurred until Leia was kind of down for the count, and he was answering to someone else. Then it would have made sense. But they wrote him that way from the beginning, to where Leia had to discipline him, and then the next woman just sort of continued with that and almost treated him like, well, because she said that you were demoted, then.
Oh, and that brings up the problem of Admiral Holdo.
I did not hate her character. How every freaking other, it seems like every conservative male on the planet just hated her. And
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of females who hate her too.
Had really stupid, petty criticisms too. I am so freaking sick of hearing about her hair.
Well, I don't know why her hair looks like that.
Other things to criticize. Stop talking about her hair.
I also don't understand why she's dressed in a ball gown when she's supposed to be an admiral. That is also weird. And also this weird, unflattering ball gown that emphasizes her neck. That was confusing too. Like, what is the design of this outfit?
I never once worried about her gown.
I worried about it because I thought she should look like an admiral, not like whatever she's dressed as. And I think that is important. I legitimately think that is important because this is supposed to be...
Well, consider the scene in, I forget which movie it is. It had to have been 4. Yeah, because they were talking about where they were planning the strike on the Death Star. I mean, you had a similar looking character, at least, in the way that she was sort of put together.
What do you mean?
Oh, jeez.
Like, are you talking about, like, say, the outfits like the Alliance generals were wearing, or... Because I'm not entirely sure where you're going with that. I don't seem to recall any sort of outfit that didn't feel militaristic in nature. Because if you didn't notice, like, she's like not wearing a rank insignia or anything. It doesn't feel like I can see it being.
I mean, she had a rather sudden.
But she would still be wearing a rank insignia because she's still a military officer, I believe.
Okay, this one, Mon Mothma.
Oh, Mon Mothma. Mon Mothma's also a more civilian than a military leader, though. That's the thing. She's like the head of state of the rebellion as a political movement, whereas Admiral Akbar and General Dodonna and General Riken and so forth, they're all, they're all military. They're all blatantly military leaders.
Right, but weren't they all killed? So it would make sense that the person who had to step up wouldn't necessarily be.
But her rank was already vice admiral. In fact, Poe comments on a battle that comments on a battle that she won, and I can't remember what the battle was called, but that's immaterial.
Oh yeah.
Remember, he comments on her military experience, and that's what makes it jarring for so many people that she's dressed like this. And like, it sounds like a nitpick at first, but when you really think about it, like, why doesn't she look like military? Like, she doesn't necessarily have to wear a traditional uniform, but it's so weird the way she is dressed. The purple hair, yeah, I think the purple hair is immaterial. It's weird, but I don't think it's important. But there is something about her that screams not military, and the movie never.
And it didn't. And the movie doesn't really bug me because it's not like she was, going to be maneuvering anything outside of, a chair.
I would just say that the movie should have done more to justify it. Like, not a lot. Again, like we were saying before,
it is kind of weird though when you have people of a sort of feminist bent that they would present a female leader as looking so soft. Really.
Yeah, like, I mean, I tell you right now, I played Star Wars: The Old Republic, the MMO, and I played the soldier, the Republic soldier class, and your commanding officer is General Garza. She's like a 60-year-old woman, and she's in a crisp, clean military uniform, and man, she is hard as nails, and I love that woman. Like, she's not even that interesting, but there's something about her in that uniform, looking like a general that makes me go, man, I love General Garza. And it's everything about her appearance that makes, it's everything about that makes me like Garza, that makes me not like how Holdo presents herself.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to sort of answer some of the criticisms about Admiral Holdo. One being that she was not explaining her moves or what she was attempting to do with their dwindling fleet. I mean, okay, first of all, she doesn't have to explain her moves.
That's just true.
So that would have been a courtesy.
But I think that's a bad argument. You may go on, though. I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
She didn't have to. And it did seem as if she and Leia had discussed this plan ahead of time.
Not exactly being the question, but because Leia got blown out into space during the emergency.
Animals were being released or whatever.
Or
no,
when?
It wouldn't have been then.
Because you have to remember, the only time they could have really formulated a proper escape plan would have been when the Supremacy was attacking the Raddus.
So
because
I can't remember. There was a somebody said something
like
that, and it might have been when Leia came back at the end, where she said something that indicated it was her plan, or it was a plan that she had approved or something.
Yeah, well, that's at the very end, and I'm assuming that what Holdo was doing was an amendment to the original plan, which I assume was to travel to Crate originally. And then they had to amend that plan somewhat because, of course, they were now being chased by the Supremacy and its attendant fleet.
But however it goes, she knew what the plan was, and she was executing it as well as she knew how. And whenever Leia came back,
I did not mean to elbow my microphone there.
She obviously felt that it had been handled as well as could be expected. So, that's it's like my defense of Holdo and her decisions. like I said, Poe's whole rebellion against authority thing would have made more sense if he had
Rebelled
just
against.
rebelled against her.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, it worked out to where she was just doing the best she could with the plan they had.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people would have been a lot more forgiving of what happened in this whole chase sequence, if that had been the case, probably.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you right now, when it comes to the idea of Holdo withholding the plan, isn't you're right? She doesn't have to tell anyone, but the fact that she gives no indication that she even has a plan at all is a huge problem, because that's why like half the Radis's crew backs Poe in his mutiny later on in the movie. It's because like morale has plummeted to such a low point that no one, that these people don't actually trust her at all. And by the way, that mutiny was so weird because it's like like 5 people pull guns on 5 other people, and all 390 other people on the ship just don't seem to give a damn. Like, what's going on here? Like there's a mutiny going on, but no one cares.
I mean, most people would just sort of wait and see which side
but no one's
had the
waiting
upper
and
hand.
seeing. Everyone's so busy evacuating. No one's like stopped and like, what's gonna happen? Like everyone's just like, oh, looks like Poe's pulled a gun at Admiral Holdo. Well, we better get this crate on here. Wait, Poe's pulled a gun at Admiral Holdo. That's normally what happens. You do a double take at least. But no one seems to care.
Those poor people had a lot to. They were just dealing with a lot. There
was so many people on the Radis in that hangar busy with the evacuation, and no one else seems to give a damn about this. I'm just like,
maybe they were Qui-Goning, and they were like, nope, not my problem.
They're not Jedi Knights. That doesn't work. And even if they were Jedi Knights, I'm pretty sure the Jedi would stop for a second and go like, what's going on here? Do we intervene? This is kind of an emergency. Do we intervene? Like we're in an emergency here.
Honestly, I think those poor people were just waiting to see who won.
By going about their business. I think that's a little stretch. That's a bit of a stretch. But anyway, back to Admiral Holdo and the plan. But yeah, I think that's the chief problem though, is the fact that she didn't give any indication that there was a plan. Because as a lot of people have pointed out, once Poe finds out what the plan is, he is totally okay with it. And it at least leads me to believe there's at least some chance, maybe not a great chance based on how his character's written, but there's some chance that if Holdo had just said, I have a plan, but I do not want to share it at this time, either because I want to see what happens, or I'm afraid there's a mole in the fleet, or anything, frankly, might have been sufficient justification for him to just not bother with it anymore. And instead, the fact that she completely clams up and, in fact, acts like a bitch to him, which is very noteworthy. Like she doesn't act in a professional manner when she, like, kind of smacks him down when he asks about the plan. Like, she acts like a bitch. And, because, again, she doesn't feel...
Pretty sure that's sexist.
Yeah, it is sexist. I don't care. She acts like a bitch.
Well, the thing is... Yeah, she does make that comment that she refers to Leia demoting him.
Mm-hmm, and she's condescending.
She's
condescending throughout that conversation, too. That's
like, you have no place to question me.
Which is, again, weird for a military leader. I don't know. Like, if the movie played it straight with her, like, maybe being a bad military leader, because if you ever paid attention, that sounded condescending. Anyway, if you ever paid attention, like you never pay attention. Anyway, but if you pay attention, like the way the movie plays scenes between Poe and Holdo, it actually feels a lot like the movie's treating Holdo like a villain. Like it treats like especially I think when the medical frigate is destroyed, and she says like stay the course, and the musical cue is kind of grim. And, like, everyone's, like, looking at Holdo, like, what are you doing, lady? And it's just, like, the movie treats her, not, like, necessarily like a villain, but, like, sort of like a minor villain, like, sort of like that character, like, through their own negligence is causing problems. And it's weird in that way, in that it's like maybe if it had treated that more straightforward, it might have fit better, but it doesn't, because at the end of the because of course at the end of her life, at the end of her part in the movie, she does a very, very noble thing.
Hmm.
Leaving aside the whole debate about whether or not weaponizing FTL is a good idea, among other things. It's one of those things where it's like she does this very noble thing at the end of the movie, but in its own way, it feels almost entirely unearned, because
I felt like if anyone should have had that moment, it should have been Finn.
yeah,
Um,
again,
and I get that, it was supposed to be, brave and
it was brave, and also it was a what's the word? It was um, justified her actions. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not justified her actions because that's too long. I'm looking for a very specific word here. Um,
I don't know what you're looking
Not
for.
redeemed, but I feel like it's a word that starts with an R. Either way, the point is, but it feels like, in the end, it's kind of like she was right all along, kind of, that's what that scene kind of was like, kind of thinking was going for there.
Um, I didn't get
I'm pretty
that
sure
that
that
she was right all along. I just felt like, like I said, she was imperfectly executing the plan. Um, and then, that was sort of her redemption for screwing
redemption,
it up.
got it, redemption. Told you it was an R word, and I started with an R-E-D. Anyway, but yes,
Yeah.
redemption, yeah. Redemption
I
specifically, though,
just,
because,
like
yeah.
I get it, but at the same time, I felt like the self-sacrifice really should have been Ben's. Like
Finn's and
his character actually had, a journey that it would have made sense to end that way.
mm-hmm.
Whereas hers just didn't.
It just happens. It's like this really
Yeah.
weird, unearned moment. It's like it's not earned. Because the movie
It was
doesn't.
almost like her character was more important than she should have been.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I feel like a big part of the problem, frankly, is that Admiral Holdo's inserted in this movie to be this sort of counterpoint to Poe's reworked character.
Yeah,
And
she
that's
was
also, I
she was
think,
supposed to be like, cool
I think that's
and
also part of the
collected and
reason, because there's two reasons. I think it's also part of the reason they pushed Admiral Akbar out of the giant hole in the bridge. And that's the other reason, I think, is because Eric Bowersfield died 2 years ago. His original voice actor, and they had him voice Admiral Akbar in the Force Awakens, and he passed away shortly after the Force Awakens was released. But I think but I think that's the other reason they tried to get rid of Admiral Akbar, so they didn't have this guy who isn't really Admiral Akbar doing the voice. But I think that's also why they pushed Admiral Akbar out, because I think there also might have been more emotional weight if Admiral Akbar had been there. Some people said that maybe the rat should have been home one from the original trilogy. I don't think so, personally. Again, I already have a problem with how much nostalgia Episode 7 crammed down our throats. I don't want Episode 8 to do that too, and even then Episode 8 did that a lot. But there's still the matter, though, of connecting and attaching to what's going on the screen. And with Admiral Holdo, that didn't work. With Admiral Holdo, that failed miserably, I'd say. Because Admiral Holdo's a character a lot of people do not like. They may not. I don't think people hate Holdo on the same level they hate Rose, but Holdo's not a character that's handled well. And I almost,
I think Holdo was mostly just inept.
yeah,
Rose like actively took something from, I would call, a fan favorite. Yeah, so.
And I also think, and it's like that's kind of what I mean. Like, if the movie had played like with like her ineptitude a little more straight than they did, rather than trying to like really turn her into this great big hero, like because it kind of feels like what they wanted to do there. Like they wanted her to be the calm, collected leader, where Poe is this hot-headed, irrational,
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Flyboy.
But if they had played her as a little more inept, if they had played that a little more straight, it would have worked better. I also think that like some people had like some really good ideas when it came to Poe's mutiny, in that this would be a moment where Poe actually rises to the occasion, to be like the leader that he needs to be, and like maybe subsumes Admiral Holdo instead, rather than Holdo taking control again.
I don't like
There are
post
plenty of ways.
characters throughout the movie
Like there are
because
plenty of ways to write this. It's not done that way, and that's where it messes up.
I don't think, him sort of taking her place or whatever would have worked either. I
Maybe
think it would
not.
have just made him, a bigger douche.
It's just possibilities. It's just throwing possibilities out there, because what
But
is there doesn't work, not well enough anyway.
yeah. Anyhow. Okay, so I guess we could talk about Chewie. I felt like Chewie had some character development in this movie.
He becomes a vegan. Yeah, no. Oh,
He didn't become a vegan. Okay, so I love the Porgs.
I don't.
Love the Porgs so much. They're great. I love the Porgs. And it's not just a merchandising thing. I haven't bought a single Porg item, but I will. I freaking love the Porgs, okay? On an island with, alien nuns and a grumpy old Jedi, the Porgs are the best thing about all of those scenes the whole time they're there. I love the Porgs. And I laughed my head off when Chewie had, the Porg that he was roasting over the spit and he was going to eat it, and then they just look at him and he's like, I love that so much, because the whole time, except for the Star Wars Christmas special, which most people don't accept as even a Star Wars movie.
It's not even a movie, though, is it? It's a TV special.
Anyhow, the Wookiees are just these super badass humanoid death puppies, and they will rip your arms off and drink your blood if you so much as look at them wrong. I mean, they're just Wookiees are scary the whole time. You don't mess with a Wookiee. And all of a sudden, he's lost his best friend. He's decided to take up with this young girl and fly across the galaxy because, he lost his best friend. And there he is, bored out of his mind on this island, and he befriends the Porgs. I felt like Chewie had a lot of character development in that moment, and it was beautiful.
Yeah,
I love Chewie even more, and I love the Porgs.
It's funny, but that's actually not such a bad take. I still disagree. I disagree vehemently, but that's actually not a terrible take as far as Chewie using the Porgs to kind of fill that void. That's actually, I actually appreciate that. But I don't like the Porgs at all.
I love Porgs.
Because it goes back, but it goes back to the.
That Chewie was, he was a bit depressed and he was, bored because he's there. He's got nothing to do. Rey's trying to convince Luke to train her, and he's just like,
I don't know.
He has nothing but his sadness to keep him company, and all of a sudden he has these Porgs.
If you ask me, if they wanted to do something, they should have had Luke interact with Chewie more. If they really wanted to do something like that. Because my problem with the Porgs, frankly, goes back to the whole, this movie's full of forced humor. Totally asynchronous humor.
Natural, and I loved it.
I didn't think it was natural at all. The Porgs are there purely for merchandising, and that's kind of where the problem lies. If the
I felt like it was there for Chewie's development too, because not only
Chewie really didn't develop either, though. Chewie's just kind of there. He's set dressing.
Not only did he not eat the Porg, but he let them build nests on his ship, and you know how Chewie feels about his ship.
Actually, we really don't, because we can't understand a thing Chewie says.
Well, you can understand Chewie's body language and his tone.
But even then, my problem
I
is
just,
that Chewie's treated as set dressing. Same with C-3PO. Same with R2-D2. R2-D2's like the one who gets like the biggest moment because he of course plays Leia's message. But they're not really. I don't really feel like they're treated properly. Like they're just there, and I don't. And that's kind of where my disappointment comes from. It's like, they're just there. I don't like that. I think they would expect not that I would expect them to do a lot with them or anything. It's just why have them there at all? If more than anything, just make him a cameo then.
well, I mean, here's the thing. I feel like you can't, in one breath, complain about nostalgia being forced down your throat, and then in the next say that all of these, all of like the original cast should have had.
I don't think they. Well, that's not. I'm not even arguing they should have had moments though. What I'm saying is that don't do anything with them at all, rather than just kind of just plopping them in there just to be there. It's just that's what that threw me off pretty bad. Like that
Right.
threw me.
In this, especially in this movie, I feel like Chewie is still, like that link to Han, and you don't really get a lot of closure with Han.
There's another problem there.
Yeah, and so that I don't know. The way I saw it, Chewie was sad, and the Porgs gave him it sort of fulfilled him in some way. He almost became motherly to the Porgs, and it was adorable.
I'll reiterate. I suppose that's a decent take. It certainly softened my view slightly. I still think that given the option of having Porgs or not having Porgs, I wouldn't have Porgs, and I would do something different with Chewie. But
and I love Ewoks, the adorable little murder bears. I love them.
Ewoks are fun. And Ewoks also serve a much more direct purpose in their film, and that's worth noting, because they actually actively fight the Empire. The Porgs are there mostly for dumb comedy bits.
The Porgs were there for Chewie, and I appreciate them for that.
Dumb comedy mostly.
They were there for Chewie. I think Chewie can heal now. He'll,
I don't know about that.
He's gonna, be a sort of fuller, richer Wookiee character now because of the Porg. It would also be hilarious if the Porgs that were nesting on the ship somehow ended up like crapping all over the Jedi books, and then Rey couldn't read them.
What did I say about dumb forced humor? You are literally doing that right now.
I mean, Luke tried to destroy them. Let the Porgs finish what he started.
I guess we should talk about Luke now that you brought him up.
Yep. He's the last name on my list. Actually, I wrote him down before Chewie, but I thought I'd get to Chewie. Luke, I had some mixed feelings about Luke. First of all, tossing the lightsaber over his shoulder, I thought was a cheap move, because they really built that up, and you end with like this circling, this moment between Rey and Luke, and they both have a decision to make, and then he just tosses the lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
That felt cheap.
Dumb forced comedy.
Porgs are awesome. Tossing the lightsaber, no.
Anyway, you want to go on about Luke? Because I want you to get your point of view out before I talk. Because I also want to see where we agree. Because I found that we do agree in some places.
I can understand grumpy old man. I can understand, living as a hermit. Mm-hmm. I can understand his point about the Jedis and their hubris, and how every time they've tried to fix things, it's only made it worse. So I get that. I get that, and in a way, I think that he kind of projects a little bit his mistakes with Kylo, with Ben, mm-hmm. Onto Jedis as a whole. Mm-hmm. Like, it's inevitable that we will all mess up at some point, and it's only going to make things worse. So I get that.
It also makes me wonder how much of that might have been applied. Like, I wonder how much he knows about how Obi-Wan failed Anakin.
Mm.
I wonder if that might be applicable here, too. I mean,
Well,
that's
I
entirely
think,
based on inference, but I'm just curious.
I think he's had enough time to figure it out while he's, been in exile.
Or maybe Ben's talked to him or something. You know.
Yeah. Force ghost chats around the fire and all that.
I don't know how I'm roasting these marshmallows, but they're delicious.
So I understand that. I understand, like his character's reticence and I okay, another moment that really sort of like pulled me out of the movie a little bit was milking the sea cow. I understand it intellectually as he's trying to push Rey away and just make her give up on him because he doesn't want to train her.
But of course, you're not supposed to push the audience away in the process.
Right. I get the purpose there. It's just the execution.
Yeah. Yeah. No one wants to see green sea cow whale titty milk thing. And the fact that they spent like $2.5 million on this animatronic that literally spends 6 seconds of screen time in the movie.
Yeah, that was super dumb.
It's just like, are you an idiot, Ryan Johnson, or are you an idiot, Ryan Johnson?
Like there are any number of other things that he could have done just to, let her know that he doesn't care and she can go away now and you don't want me to train you anymore.
Like beat up a nun, beat up one of the local nuns or something. No, that would be dumb. But it would be less gross than milking a giant sea cow whale titty.
I mean, they didn't even have to show that part. They could have just, showed him going down there with the thing and coming up with it full,
And then, yeah, and of course it's dripping all over his beard, and you're just like,
right? I mean, we didn't need Loch Ness porn. That was gross.
oh gosh. Why did you make it worse? How could you? I didn't think someone could make that worse. I thought Ryan Johnson had reached the pinnacle of making it worse by putting it in the movie in the first place.
It was already that bad. I just put it in very simple terms.
You just made the problem worse. I am ashamed of you. I'm most apparently William Shatner.
That reminds me, I had a dream that I met William Shatner. It's weird. Anyhow.
Anyway, go on, Luke.
Yeah, that was a moment that I was like, ugh. I mean, when you have to disassociate from what you're seeing and rationalize it. Like, I get why this is happening, but I don't want to notice what's happening right now. So I don't know. I guess, I understand Luke's character and why he was written the way that he was. I do think that, there are a couple of moments in there that, like, they went overboard in him trying to be objectionable in some way.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the first projection at the end of the movie, I thought that was awesome. And I know that you were of a mind that he should like get his ship up and fix it up and go and actually join in the fight. But
I thought it would have had more. Well, I think it just would have more meaning.
Does he have on this island with his sea cow milk?
Well,
and,
I mean, here's the thing.
Huts and stuff.
Here's the thing.
And
about
how
that,
much
though.
time did he have to get that had been soaking down there in the water for decades and fix it up and get over there? And why would that have been any more valiant than making Kylo believe that he was there and then somehow forcing Kylo to doubt himself?
Because there's skin in the game, first of all. That means a lot.
Well,
But
there's a scene in the game.
that's
Obviously, if the energy it took to force project over that distance killed him,
well, I
that
mean,
was,
well, now we're getting into the
that's,
weeds of everything of the things that are going wrong here. I mean,
it's not the weeds, is what happened.
well, no, it is into the weeds because
It it
it starts
it
to tie
took
into
such an
itself.
effort for him to force project that far, that realistically, for that amount of time. He knew that he was going to die,
Yeah,
and he did it anyways. And I think that right there is the Luke Skywalker that we were promised in the originals.
well, I mean, here's the underlying problem. First of all, earlier in the movie, Rey mentions that Luke has cut himself off from the Force. If this fact is true, I don't see how he could potentially be strong enough to actually do something that's that incredible successfully. Like he'd probably be like very rusty with tuning to the Force. Now, I mean, there's not to say that it couldn't be done. It's just it feels like it stretches credulity a little bit to kind of do that sort of thing.
Well, I feel like it could be done, but it would guarantee that he would not survive
Right,
it.
and I can understand that point, but I think that's the other problem because we spend this because the problem is Luke Skywalker dying. I think, especially with Carrie Fisher dead, but the problem here is Luke Skywalker dying because the thing about it is that if you're going to project yourself with the Force to begin with, it feels to me like the whole point of doing something like that is to actually live at the end. If you're going to do that, I mean, it doesn't have to be the whole point, mind you, but it feels like if you're going to do that, then, well, obviously you're not there to actually be physically harmed. So maybe so you would think the objective would be to live.
I don't think so,
I do.
because I don't think that he never changed his mind about training her. And that would sort of solve two problems at once.
But it screws up the movies
Whatever
going
Ray
forward,
became
though.
after that, it would be what she was meant to become. And it wouldn't be because of his influence.
I think it just screws up the movies going forward. Because for me personally, I don't necessarily have a problem with Luke being a crotchety old man. Like that doesn't really bother me. I wish it had been better. I wish it had been earned. I wish it had been better established. I wish it didn't cause a massive plot hole with The Force Awakens, because of course he leaves this map behind. But if he came to the island to die, then why is there a map? You know, what's the point of going to the first Jedi Temple when you can just literally go anywhere? If that was really the point. You know, it seems like JJ was setting up for a greater purpose for Luke's journey, and Rian Johnson just turns it into this, crotchety old man wants to die alone, and I think that's unfortunate. But I think the other problem
I don't necessarily think that those are completely competing.
except
I
they
mean, he
are
did that.
Because Luke in the Force Awakens sounds like he has a purpose. Luke in the Last Jedi has none. He's lost his purpose, in fact. The part of the thing about the Force projection is that he's found it again. Because I mean, let's be honest. I'll actually play this completely straight, and think that I'll say that I think the Force projection actually isn't the worst thing in the world. I would have done it differently if I think it should have been done. I would have, but I think it should have been done differently. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think it could have been, but I do think it could have been handled better. Because I mean, at the end of the day, that's the thing. If Luke was going to die anyway, he might as well have been there in person.
Consider this, though. Perhaps it's not that he wanted to die or that was his purpose.
But that was, yeah, I know, and you said that already.
But maybe he did it for the same reason that Obi-Wan allowed Vader to strike him down.
Right. Yeah, you
Because
already alluded
now
to that. Right.
he can be there as a sort of guide regardless of where she's at.
I mean, that's possible. It's definitely possible. And I'm not saying that these aren't possibilities. I'm just because, and the reason I said this is getting into the weeds is actually because this kind of really gets down to the fundamental core of what I personally think is wrong with the Last Jedi, and like how it's like where like its tone and its messaging is, and what the Last Jedi wants to do and what it actually ends up achieving. I don't necessarily think that Luke should have gone around and done something really badass, but it just doesn't. It doesn't feel like the Last Jedi even really knew where it wanted to go with this, and it messes up. And it messes up really how it reaches its finale.
Mm.
Because you're not wrong. I'm not going to go around and say you're completely wrong. You're stupid. You're a woman. I mean, I say that anyway.
I am a woman, but that's not, an insult.
But no, I'm not going to go around and say that. But I feel like there's some fundamental part, and I'm not even sure I can clearly define, that's missing from the Luke Skywalker plot, the Luke Rey plot. That prevents it from really tying together properly. Like as far as it's concerned, all we have to do is is infer that Luke is doing this force projection thing because it's the only thing he can think to do, even though he knows it's going to cost him everything. But that's purely inference.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't. I don't think for something as important as this, for something as important as heroism and self-sacrifice, it shouldn't be left up to heroism. And I think this maybe even possibly ties back to the whole Finn self-sacrifice thing, where the movie just didn't know what it wanted to do with that. The movie just flat out did not know what it wanted to do with self-sacrifice, because it sets up this Finn moment where it looks like he's going to do this and then screws it up entirely. And then it sets up this thing where Luke's like, I've done this force projection thing, so, like I'm not physically in danger, but then I die. And it's like, you could be right, and he could be trying that, and he could be doing this last-ditch thing. But for a lot of people, it seems like the opposite of where it should have gone.
I definitely saw that as his, that he did that for them. He knew that it would cost him everything, and it was a sacrifice that he was willing to make. And I honestly, I'll be disappointed if it doesn't set up for his Force Ghost influencing Rey in some way in the next movie, because I think that would be sort of the natural outcome of it. Well, the same way that Obi-Wan being cut down in front of Luke, was set up for him sort of.
Well, all I can honestly
guiding him.
All I can honestly say is I hope you're right. Because as it stands, The Last Jedi has not set up Episode 9, has not put Episode 9 in a good place. It hasn't. It's going to be weird to reconcile everything that happened and some of the weirder storytelling choices it makes.
Yeah.
It's going to have a really hard time reconciling those things.
There was too much left open to interpretation, and I think that has fueled a lot of the argument
our argument at the very beginning of this, about whether or not the movie is a week later or just like 24 or 36 hours later. That's a huge problem.
I don't think it's like the worst movie ever. Like I said, I enjoyed it, but I went in not having read any opinions about it, not having, heard anything about it, and knowing, nothing's ever going to be perfect, and I just want to be entertained.
I don't think anyone asks for perfection, though. They want competence. And even if you take everything else out of the...
like they deserve perfection, and those people are annoying. But
yeah, but they're not as common as you think.
I went in really open to it, and I agree with you on several points that it badly written characters that, some of their arcs didn't really make sense. And I don't think it was awful. I liked it better than episode 1 and 2 for sure. Um,
I don't even know. I don't even know how to place it next to the prequels. Obviously, I like 3. I'm okay with 1 because 1 was coherent. It was boring as sin, but it was coherent.
yeah, oh gosh.
The
And I
problem
don't
with the
even
last,
know.
the problem with the
There are
Last
so many
Jedi.
issues with 1 though. I mean, Darth Maul is like this awesome character, and you see him for like 5 hot seconds. It's just, that
I
was
mean,
disappointing.
I mean, here's the problem. I don't. The Last Jedi isn't sufficiently coherent for me to enjoy it. Because, just because what some of the things we talked about, like it treats self-sacrifice as noble in the case of in the case of certain characters, but then treats it as ignoble in the case of one other. And like that whole Canto Bite sequence is just this doesn't even seem to like it belongs in a Star Wars movie. Um,
We didn't even discuss Snoke.
we
That
didn't.
whole
Oh
thing.
God, no! Oh no! Let's just. We've already been talking for an hour and 40 minutes. Let's just stop here. Oh God, no!
Because, I mean, I was just thinking, it's in terms of character development,
I
I felt
forgot
like
about
there was a
Snoke.
lot more possibility there with Rey and Kylo and their conversations, and then for
Yeah,
her
and
to be told that she was a nobody and her parents were nobodies, and I was like, that's just
yep.
that's the biggest bait and switch of
I'm
this
gonna tell you
whole
right
movie.
now. I personally actually kind of like the forced banana phone thing they had going on there. Um, I actually kind of enjoy that. I thought there was some emotional heft there. I thought there was some
It
actual.
was, yeah, that was
I thought it
good.
was actually interesting, and I go over it in the second part where I talk about wasted potential, and it's just like there are 2 moments in this movie where I thought that if Rey had, even if it wasn't permanent, had either turned to the dark side or at the very least had just said no, had stopped being like this perfectly good character. And I think this is where the Mary Sue thing comes in. It's not that her background isn't hard. That's not the point. That's not the point of being a Mary Sue. The thing about being a Mary Sue is that the character either experiences too much good fortune in the story where it actually matters, and in this case it's and the character is like too good. The character does everything right, makes all the right decisions. So you already see this in episode 7 where she chooses to keep BB-8 when the character we've seen, if you think about it, should have really made a selfish decision and gone for like the 2 months worth of food that she was about to get. You know?
I, I don't think
But
that was
then,
ever in her though.
but,
She's
but
a very idyllic person.
why is she though? And that's where
Um,
that's where the Mary Sue argument comes in. Why is she this idyllic character? She's
well,
so ideal.
part of that, at least I feel like, is and this is why I dislike her parentage and how that played out.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a lot of her
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
was, yeah. Um, okay, go ahead.
Well, you're going with like her hopes for who her parents were, right? Like the image she built up, like her parents were, like what her heritage is, and so forth. And that
Yeah.
helped to
So
shape
she
and guide
had,
how she would go forward.
she sort of had, something in her mind that she could aspire to,
But
that,
it's
that she had
precisely
idealized, and I think that explains a lot of her decisions, especially in episode 7.
but even
Now,
then,
in episode 8, I would have appreciated seeing more struggle there with Kylo, because she clearly connects with him,
mm-hmm.
but you don't ever really see her doubt herself.
Yep, and that's it. And eight ruins it completely. Because 8 turns her parents into sacks of shit. Basically, it's like it does nothing. It's like it doesn't do anything to her though. She immediately just goes right back into I'm gonna do the right thing according to what the movie says the right thing ought to be. And I feel like there's such wasted potential. I would have loved to see, like, when she found out the truth about what Luke actually did to Ben Solo. I would have loved to have seen her kind of like at least turn her back on, like, this ideal of like the Jedi and so forth, because everything Luke has shown her up until this point is basically, completely counteracted what she believed about the Jedi or what she could become as a Jedi, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And that was the first great moment. And the second great moment is when they're on the flagship and and Kylo reveals to her that she's really nobody. It's like, that would have been like the perfect moment for her to go, well, maybe then you have something that I actually need. And the way that would have been such a unexpected paradigm shift, the way that would have been a real subversion, because they love talking about subversion, that would have been such a real, meaningful, emotionally impactful subversion of what we would have otherwise come to have expected of a Star Wars movie. That I would have loved to have seen that, and I was so utterly disappointed in both those moments to see Rey just keep going on as she was, almost completely unchanged and unmoved and almost robot-like in a way.
Well, I could understand on the island because she does go into the cave, and she's a bit rebellious there, and you kind of you see her have this, I don't know, sort of surreal. Um, it's almost like an echo of the emptiness inside of her.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Ooh, I actually
and
hadn't thought of that. Nice thing.
it would
I'll
have
do
been
that.
nice if on the, in that moment with Kylo, if you had sort of visually seen her come a bit untethered, because that sort of defined her for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just to see that, even if she turns it around, if she can master herself and decide, that she's not going to give into it, to struggle,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
that would have been good.
that's where a lot of people like kind of like come up short, like just kind of hit a wall when it comes to whether or not they like Rey's character. I think ultimately, that kind of like defines a lot of what I was. I feel like it's almost like a microcosm of like what I said before Episode 8 came out, in that I think whether or not people view Episode 7 as a good movie is going to depend very, very heavily on whether or not Episode 8 is a good movie. And I feel like Rey's character arc, whether or not Rey is a good character, is going to be defined very heavily as to whether or not her character is good in 8. I think the same thing applies there. And a lot of people do not see Rey as a good character, do not see Episode 8 as a good movie. And I think it's kind of blowing back onto 7, which I nominally enjoyed. I in hindsight, I started to enjoy it less, but I still think it's not a bad movie.
I still love it. It's a
But
great movie.
I think though that the problems with 8 are blowing back onto 7, and not unreasonably so.
It seems overall that there was a lot of unexplored potential in 8, and too many just unexplained moments, that are. It's okay to not go into each and every detail, but it's not good to leave too much open to interpretation.
And I think, like I said, either last week or the week before, when it comes to the details, part of the reason a lot of people are breaking down like every single detail of this movie is just because, again, it's kind of compounding on itself. Once the big things go wrong, people start to see the little issues in the movie. Whereas, say, with the original trilogy, people didn't do that precisely because the big things were right, so they could forgive some of the minor things or some of the minor inconsistencies and so forth. And I would even then say that the minor inconsistencies in the original trilogy aren't as bad as the minor inconsistencies in 8 and 7 by extension. No, I still separate 7 out from 8 there, because I don't think it's fair to lump 7 in with 8 in this regard, because
Yeah.
7 was
I
on the
was
whole more
thinking,
competently handled.
that scene with Finn and Rose, even if she had just pulled alongside, and looked at him like, okay, if you do this, I'm doing this. And then
there's
if he had
again,
decided he wasn't willing to sacrifice both of them, it would have made more sense than her running into him.
and incidentally, that goes into the little minor details where people point out that she turned around with the rest of the ski speeders. How the hell did she catch up? Minor detail, but kind of important. They're kind of important once the movie ceases to make sense.
He did have that moment where he was like, he had to make peace with that choice. So maybe she had time. I don't know.
That doesn't work. Because she still would have had so much distance to travel.
That doesn't bother me nearly as much as that she just completely ruined that entire.
But you
moment.
see, if the scene made sense on that logical level, she wouldn't have been able to ruin the moment. Anyway, okay, so that lasted way longer than I thought it would.
Apparently, we have hidden stores of energy when we start nerding out early hard.
I mean, even you thought it would be short, but it's like, no.
I did, yeah.
I thought you would have less to say, but this actually ended up being the conversation I wanted it to be. I wanted us to have this talk. I wanted to hear your defense of The Last Jedi, and you actually brought up some interesting ideas, some interesting points. I don't really agree with most of them because, I think that The Last Jedi's issues. It's not just that. I think that The Last Jedi's problems. The Last Jedi's problems, again, I think just compound on itself. Like it's because so many things that we agreed on were wrong that it causes other things that you kind of liked or didn't mind as much. It's what makes me see them as also unforgivably wrong. That's just my personal opinion, though. And I think okay, gonna try that again. We want to hear yours. We want to hear your opinions. So
I can't wait to be called all sorts of names for liking that movie. It's gonna be awesome. Just put all your insults in the comments.
Yes, and I will be sure to do that. All the comment, the creator hearts these comments. I'll be sure to hit that for every single one of those. No matter how insulting or sexist, especially sexist they are. If you have any rude comments about Kelly Marie Tran or Laura Dern, be sure to share them in the comments. No, kidding.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, I don't think. Actually, now that I think about it, people really didn't go in on Laura Dern. It was Kelly Marie Tran, but that's precisely because Rose Tico is such an awful character.
It was just it's such an unnecessary character in the whole thing.
And
it sucks because the actress was excited.
Also, it's also weird because we were talking about because we had shared on Facebook Messenger. I shared on Facebook that day War Pig thing about Starfire and everything and whatnot. And it's just like the same thing happened with the Kelly Marie Tran here, though. Like they kind of made her look frumpy, but it's like Kelly Marie Tran's kind of cute herself, but Rose Tico's kind of frumpy looking. It's just like, I mean, they didn't have to doll her up or anything, but it's just like. But like they de-emphasize the things that kind of that make her look attractive. It's just like. But anyway, we want to thank you for watching this episode of Nerd Rage. Please do not actually leave hate in the comments below. I actually will go out of my way to moderate this section. If you do have an argument, please keep it reasonable and whatnot. It can be long, but just reasonable. At any rate, yes, thank you for watching. Leave a like, comment down below, and we will catch you next week. I don't know if we'll be better rested, but we'll be back next week.
We'll be here.
And we definitely won't talk about Star Wars.
Probably.
Hopefully. Even I understand limits. Until next time, everybody. Your goodbye was like completely silent there.